Well, it's been a little bit, but Shane and I are back with you guys on a new episode of the EPA Podcast brought to you guys by Bleeding Green Nation. Appreciate you guys for tuning in to this episode. Be sure to subscribe to BGN Radio on all pod platforms, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, anywhere else you can find your shows. Be sure to subscribe to them. I'm your host today, Victor Williams. Be sure to follow me on all social media platforms over at the Philly Pod. Do the same for the other host of this show. You can find him on Twitter, and I don't know anywhere else, but definitely Twitter at Shane Haff NFL. The nice new clean NFL handle is much easier to find, I'm sure. And now he looks, I'm not gonna say he didn't look professional before, but it's definitely a cleaner handle. Shane, how's the new handle treating you these days? Man?
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, writing that blue check mark out as long as I could, but as soon as it was gone, I knew I was changing the name. So big difference in creating your Twitter account as a fan 8 years ago or however long ago it was, then making the transition into media. So I was searching through some of my old tweets a while back, just digging back as far as I could to see like what was I originally tweeting when I joined Twitter. And it's kind of embarrassing how much I was a fanboy for like Kist and Solak and the BGN radio shows and stuff way back in the day, always in the comment sections and stuff. Not that I think it's embarrassing for people to be commenting. We certainly appreciate the interactions there, but just some of the things I was saying as a fan make me cringe now as an analyst, but it's okay. It's okay.
Revisionist sister. It's funny you bring that up because Kist and Solak were sort of like the bar set here at Bleeding Green Nation. Then they did their own projects, and I still listen to Solak every week on the Ringers Philly special he does with Shio Kapadia and those guys, and it's all still great info. And when I had first started this, I started doing this stuff 2019 around the Double Doink, and then you and I connected through another outlet and got to know each other through there, which is why this podcast works, obviously. But it's funny to see all the BGN stuff, and I was excited when I even had like a tweet featured in an article, and now we're sitting here and doing a show on the feed, which is still surreal to believe at times. But I definitely get the cringeworthiness because there's some people I talk to now these days who I was like fanboying over, like analysts and stuff. And then you get to talk to them, and then you're like, wow, that was kind of embarrassing. But here we are those days. Like we said before, appreciate you guys for tuning into this episode. This week, we are here to treat you guys to an off-season treat. As we all know, OTAs and all that kind of stuff are getting underway, and we're going to get into the lull period of the NFL off-season. So now this is where the busy work begins, and it's time to get creative. And this week, we are going to rank the NFC East positional groups for all four teams in a division, from offense and defense. And Shane, I'll let you kind of I guess I'll let you lead it. Obviously, I'm pretty sure we know where we're going to start here, but you can go ahead and lead the first position group, which I assume is going to be quarterback.
yeah, for sure. Before we jump into that, though, one more embarrassing story, because why not confess things live on the air?
On our soapbox now, might as well.
I also loved Kist and Mark Schofield's QB Factory. Well, they rebranded it QB Sco Show, QB Factory. But I was a history teacher, and so I nerded out over the history references at the start of the show, loved listening to them, and I was always like sending them history references in their DMs and stuff. And every time I would get a shout out on the show with one of my questions, or they would use one of my history references, I would screen record like the audio off of my phone and save them in a folder. So when the BGN was talking about bringing me onto this, I had a Zoom meeting with Kist, and I was just like, okay, don't embarrass yourself. Don't be a fanboy. But it was pretty hard to draw that line, to be honest. So Kist, if you're listening, you can let me know if I succeeded. I'm fairly sure I didn't, but
you know what's funny about that? When I had my Zoom call with Kist, he was like, we had to go into, I guess they do this with everybody, but they said we had to go into your tweets and make sure you weren't dragging BLG or like slandering anybody on BGN. And I was like, nah, I don't think so. Not that I could find. But I just thought that was funny when he had went to talk to me about coming on here. But yes, big ups to Kist for bringing myself and Shane, as well as I'm sure many others who get to be on this feed on a weekly basis.
So, all right. Well, let's dive in.
Story time's over.
Story time's over. You guys let us know if you want some more stories. We're 5 minutes into the podcast, and now we'll start talking about football. But that's what you get in the off season. So here we go. We're gonna, like Victor said, we're gonna walk through each position group in the NFC East and sort of rank them against each other. And so I have depth charts pulled up. They're not going to be shared on the screen. If you guys are watching on YouTube, you're going to see our tier list. Victor and I will probably tweet it out once the episode goes live too. If you're just listening to the audio platform, you can go check it when you're done. But we'll just walk through offense first and then go defense. So let's talk quarterback. Obviously, the Eagles have Jalen Hurts. Dallas has Dak Prescott. The Giants have Daniel Jones, the $40 million man. And then the Commanders have some combination of Sam Howell and Jacoby Brissett, whoever they end up starting. So I feel like this one's a pretty easy tier, to be honest. Jalen Hurts has to be number one for me. I'm assuming you're not going to have any issues with that assessment.
No arguments for me. Are we also factoring in backup quarterbacks into this as well, like depth, or just the starters? Because I'll take Mariota over Daniel.
Yeah, I'm mostly, as I think about it, I'm mostly thinking in terms of starters. But I mean, I think depth plays in a little bit, especially you get into like, wide receiver 4 matters a little bit. Your 6th and 7th offensive linemen, those matter some. I'm not as concerned about backup quarterback though. But so Dak
Eagles
Prescott
still lead in both scenarios. So
yeah, for sure. Dak Prescott, is he QB2 in the division? I would assume.
Yes, I believe so. Yes.
Yeah, and so then Daniel Jones versus Sam Howell / Jacoby Brissett. I personally, I would go Daniel Jones here as QB3 and leave Sam Howell, who maybe he's something. I don't really think so, but he hasn't had a lot of time to be proven. I could see me flipping 3 and 4 later on this season potentially, but I think 1 and 2 are pretty well clear cut.
Yeah, I think this is accurate rankings. Now, I'm higher on Sam Howell than most because I know we only have like 60 minutes of tape of him against the Cowboys that we can go off of, but I liked him in college, even as a prospect, and I'm surprised it took Washington as long as it did to get Carson Wentz out of there and especially get Heineke out of there and see what they had in Sam Howell. So I have high hopes for the kid, but this is appropriate rankings for quarterback as of now. Daniel Jones is coming off a adequate year, I'll call it. He's coming off an adequate season, not a bad season by any means. They have, well, we'll get into the groups later on. He has some players around him, so even if they plateau, the Giants should be okay. So Daniel Jones, I think, is a good spot at 3.
Okay, so let's pretty well in agreement there. Let's move on to running back, where I think it's maybe not as clear cut. Yeah,
so be polarizing.
The Eagles have the trio of DeAndre Swift, Rashad Penny, Kenny Gainwell, Boston Scott, although we're not going to go 4 deep for everybody here. The Cowboys have Tony Pollard. They drafted Deuce Vaughn. They've got Malik Davis on their bench as well. The Giants have Saquon Barkley and Matt Breida. And then the Commanders have Brian Robinson Jr. and Antonio Gibson. So, Victor, what do you think? Who has the best running back room in the division?
I am going to say the Giants will be my pick. Saquon is the best back in the division. They also have, like you said, Breida and Eric Gray, who's still unproven, but he's a decent guy they got in the 5th round. I think as long as Barkley stays healthy, then they have the best group in the division because Barkley is just a monster on his own right. He can take over a game. He can have an offense run through him. So I will say the Giants, just because their lead back is, I think, head and shoulders above the rest of the division.
Yeah, I could see this group. I could see it going about any way. I don't have any problem with that ranking. Like I said, Saquon at full health. Saquon is the best back in the division, in my opinion. So
right.
Maybe their depth isn't as good as some other teams, but they've got the true feature back. So I'll go with you on that. Number 2 is interesting. You've got really talented running backs in Philadelphia, obviously with a lot of injury concerns. You've got Tony Pollard, who, to be honest, I think is one of the more overrated backs in the league. Now, wow. I think he should have had more playing time. And I think he's better than Zeke at this point in his career, but I think that he's given a lot of credit for just being better than what Zeke was last year in low usage. And so I'm excited to see Tony Pollard as a feature back this year, but I'm not sold that he's like an elite tier running back. And honestly, I really like the Commanders duo of Brian Robinson Jr. and Antonio Gibson. So you could talk me about any direction here, but who do you think's the number 2 running back group in the division?
Man, I am going to say, I say this only because we don't know what Deuce Vaughn is going to give Dallas. I'm going to put Washington second because Brian Robinson, who's I think he's young and will be very good, and Antonio Gibson is a good pass catching back behind them. I think I think the two of them are better than Tony Pollard and whatever Deuce Vaughn is going to give you. I like Tony Pollard personally. I like him as a player. I like what he provides on offense. But like you mentioned, like if the barometer is like, oh, he's better than Ezekiel Elliott, how good really is he in the league? He's not close to where Saquon is. That's for sure. And I think Brian Robinson, especially, and Antonio Gibson are in the same relative tier as Tony Pollard, or at least can get there. They have the potential to be. So I think the duo of those two are better than Dallas. So I'm going to put Washington second here. I really like their backs. I really like Brian Robinson. I have Eagles 4, which is going to draw a lot of ire, but
okay, so you have the Eagles. See, I would probably put the Eagles 3 here ahead of the Cowboys.
Oh man.
I think if you're just comparing Tony Pollard to Rashad Penny, and you're factoring in the injuries, then maybe you give it to Pollard. But when you look at the whole room with DeAndre Swift as well, versus the Cowboys not really having much alongside of Tony Pollard, I personally would put the Eagles 3 here and the Cowboys 4, which is kind of shocking given how long the Cowboys have had such a good running game. And obviously Mike McCarthy is, we're going to run the ball this year, which we'll see. But I personally would put the Eagles 3 here and the Cowboys 4.
Yeah, you could certainly talk me into that. It's hard for me to put Pollard 4 because of just like we've seen what he's done and he's proven. And Swift and Penny, as good as they could be, Penny can arguably be the most productive back in the division if he's healthy. And DeAndre Swift, it's just that they're both the bigger injury risks. They're the biggest risks actually in the division, and that injury history is extensive. If you factor in Kenneth Gainwell, I think you can put the Eagles 3. I think like you factor in Gainwell, like worst comes to worst, they both get hurt, and you have Gainwell and Scott running the show. I think you'll still be okay. So I can definitely put, like, if you factor in Gainwell, I think the Eagles at 3 makes sense.
All right, so we will lock the Eagles in at 3, the Cowboys at 4.
Dallas at 4 is a tough look. Backs. That is a tough.
It is.
Look.
I mean, it's a good division in terms of running backs. So
Dallas, get ready.
Let's flip over to receiver here now. So I'll list receivers 4 deep, and we'll go from there. So the Eagles have A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Olamide Zaccheaus, and Quez Watkins. The Cowboys have CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, Michael Gallup, Jalen Tolbert. The Giants have Isaiah Hodgins, Darius Slayton, Paris Campbell, Jalen Hyatt, Wan'Dale Robinson, Sterling Shepard. I'm not sure what order they're going to have those guys in, but and then the Commanders have Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, Curtis Samuel, and De'Ami Brown. So I feel pretty confident that the Eagles are number 1 in the receiver rankings off the strength of their top 2 guys. Obviously the depth's a little concerning, but I've got the Eagles as the easy number 1 here.
Yeah, you're not going to get an argument from them. They arguably have 2 top 10 receivers, one of the top duos in the league. You can argue Chase, Higgins, you can argue whatever you want to do. But the Eagles certainly have one of the top duos in the league, let alone the division. So yeah, no argument from me on that one.
Okay, so at number 2, I have the Commanders. I really like Terry McLaurin. Jahan Dotson, I think, was a slam. He had a great rookie year. Curtis Samuel is your 3rd. I like the Commanders as the 2nd best receiving room in the division. What do you say?
I'm a big Terry fan. I like McLaurin. I like his game. The rest, I know Curtis Samuel is nothing to scoff at. Jimmy Brown's nothing to scoff at either. Jahan Dotson is very good. Obviously, we're Penn State fans. Well, I am anyway. But man, if it wasn't for Brandon Cooks, I would have. I have to put Dallas second. Just CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb is a top 3 receiver in the division. Brandon Cook. If it wasn't for Brandon Cooks, I would agree with you. I feel like Cooks. I know he's been on a million different teams, but he's had countless 1,000-yard seasons. I think he's very good as long as he stays away from the concussions. Gallup. If you take the trios, I think Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, and Brandon Cooks are better than Terry, Samuel, and Jahan Dotson.
Okay.
If you have to compare the trios, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, and especially if you could erase 2022 from the books, that's easy. Michael Gallup coming off the injury in late 2021, he was down in 2022, but I have no problem with projecting a little bit of a bounce back there. I always liked Gallup as a player. So we can slide the Cowboys in there at 2, Washington at 3, and that leaves us with the Giants.
What did Curtis Samuel do last year? Was he serviceable? Because like he's like the wide receiver 3 is what does it for me. Like, even though I guess it's Jahan Dotson's got to be 2 at this point.
Samuel had 656 yards and 4 touchdowns last year.
Right, that's good enough. Yeah, I just like if they were to, on paper I like the Cowboys trio a little better.
All right, so we have Eagles 1, Cowboys 2, Washington 3, Giants 4 at receiver. But Michael Gallup was 424 and 4 touchdowns last year, which that was a big down year for him.
How many games though? He came back from injury at some point. He missed like half the year, didn't he?
Yeah, I don't remember at what point he
like around Thanksgiving-ish, like around there. And the Giants, they have the best WR3 group of any team in the league right now because all their receivers are WR3s. I do enjoy Jalen Hyatt's tape, so I was not happy, but it didn't shock me when they took that pick. Paris Campbell is speedy. They have a lot of small receivers is the Giants' problem. Isaiah Hodgins is like their one like semi-big target. So I don't know what Dayball is planning on offense. Are they just going to run track meets or whatever the situation is? But yeah, they do have some more talent. They just need to figure out how they're going to deploy all these guys.
Yeah, how are you going to use 5 slot receivers?
Yeah, I don't get it.
Okay, let's look at tight end groupings. The Eagles, obviously, they've got Dallas Goedert. The Cowboys have Jake Ferguson. They spent a 2nd-round pick on Luke Schoonmaker. The Giants have Darren Waller and Daniel Bellinger, and the Commanders have Logan Thomas and John Bates. This is another one where it's the easy Eagles number 1 for me. Dallas Goedert, regardless of what's behind him, I think he's a top 5 tight end in the league. So Goddard is easy to put in as number 1 for me.
Yeah, they got Dan Arnold in the building now, so maybe you got you got something there. I dare say that Dallas Goedert is the 2nd best receiving tight end in the league behind Kelsey. Is that outlandish to say? Strictly receiving. Not everything that Kelsey brings blocking and all that, but Dallas Goedert, I think Mark Andrews, maybe you can
Kittle.
Talk against him. Kittle.
I think Andrews and Kittle are both better pure receivers, but when you add in the blocking element, which is important if you're going to try to run 12 personnel and things, Goddard is so versatile and he's so good after the catch. Like, if you just want to flex a guy out in the slot and have him run routes, I'd probably take those other guys, but I would take Goddard as the whole package.
Yeah. Kyle Pitts is probably up there too. So, but he's like a receiver in a tight end's body, or whatever you want to consider it. But yeah, Dallas Goedert is the best tight end in the division. Therefore, I think the Eagles at 1 is appropriate.
Okay, so what about number 2? The Giants made the move for Darren Waller. They had Daniel Bellinger, who's 2nd-year player now. The Commanders have Logan Thomas. The Cowboys, Jake Ferguson, Luke Schoonmaker. That's not a group that I like. The order for 2 and 3 probably doesn't matter for me, but I think the Cowboys are pretty clearly number 4.
Yeah, they would have been 2 if they found a way to keep Dalton Schultz, but they decided to tag Tony Pollard instead. So that's an interesting decision. So yeah, Dallas could be at 4. You can talk me into the Giants at 2. You see what Darren Waller has left in the tank. I know he has 1,000-yard potential. We'll see if he can stay healthy. So I'll bank on Darren Waller having some sort of a resurgence with the Giants, and I'll put them at 2. Washington is whatever. They're the same every year. So
All right, so that brings us to the offensive line, and we'll consider a little bit depth here, but mainly we're going to look at starters. So the Eagles starting offensive line: Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, Jason Kelsey, Cam Jurgens / Tyler Steen / Jack Driscoll, whoever emerges, and then Lane Johnson. The Cowboys have Tyron Smith, Tyler Smith, Tyler Biotish, Zach Martin, and Terrence Steele. The Giants have Andrew Thomas, Ben Bredson, John Michael Schmitz, a guy that I loved in the draft, Mark Glowinski, and Evan Neal. And then the Commanders have Charles Leno Jr., Andrew Norwell, Nick Gates, Sam Cosme, and they signed Andrew Wiley away from the Chiefs. So this is another one where I feel like it's pretty clear that the Eagles are number 1 in the offensive line rankings. I tried really hard to not look at this through a homer lens, and it's just hard in a lot of these not to put the Eagles first. So Eagles are the easy number 1 here. I think my number 2 offensive line would probably be the Cowboys.
Yeah, I was about to say.
If we're assuming health, I mean, obviously Tyron Smith has been banged up a lot. Zach Martin has been banged up a lot, but that's a really good offensive line. And then you look at Washington and the Giants, and the Giants' offensive line used to be a laughingstock, but they've spent a top 10 pick each of the last 2 years on offensive tackles. Actually, I think Andrew Thomas was a couple years ago, but whatever, he's turned into a really good player. Evan Neal struggled last year, but I still really believe in him as a player. I love John Michael Schmitz. I thought he was a great value. So I've got the Giants as the 3rd offensive line and the Commanders bringing up the rear as number 4. How do you feel about those rankings?
Yeah, that's appropriate. The Giants and Washington, you could flip them 3 and 4. Doesn't matter to me. Now, you mentioned the homer lens. Even if, I don't consider the Dallas offensive line to be bad in any way, shape, or form. They have 2 potential Hall of Famers in Tyron Smith and Zach Martin. And Tyler Smith had a very good rookie year. It's just that the Eagles are in a league of their own when it comes to the trenches, and it's no shock to anybody. They lose Siamalu, but you assume either Juergens or Tyler Steen, whatever the camp battle is going to, however that's going to shake out. You have Juergens, who's we saw him have some dominant plays in preseason last year at center. You hope that he can project and do the same at guard, but then you still have Lane Johnson, Mailata, Kelsey, Dickerson, Pro Bowlers across the line. It's not particularly close when you look at the 2. And that's not saying Dallas has a bad offensive line. It's just the Eagles are untouchable in that department, and the Giants and the Washington and the Giants, they don't come close to Dallas, let alone the Eagles. So,
all right. So to recap the offense here, the Eagles take away the number 1 ranking in every offensive position except running back, where they came in 3rd. The Cowboys are number 2 in quarterback, wide receiver, offensive line, and number 4 in running back and tight ends. They just flip-flop 2nd to 4th.
Mm-hmm.
The Giants are number 1 on running back, number 2 on tight end, number 3 on QB and O-line, and number 4 on receiver. And then Washington does not have a number 1 ranking. They're number 2 at running back, number 3 at wide receiver and tight end, and number 4 at quarterback and offensive line. So that'll wrap up the offensive side of the ball here. We're going to throw it to a quick break, and then we will be back to break down and power rank every position group on the defense. Back after this. And we are back here on the EPA podcast, breaking down every position group in the NFC East. We've made it through the offense. We're going to transition to the defensive side of the ball here. And this is where it gets a little tricky. Not all linebackers are created the same. Not all defensive ends are created the same. So I sort of went with the edge rusher versus interior defensive line. And maybe we should have just combined defensive line all into one, but that discounts guys like Micah Parsons and Hassan Reddick who rush from a linebacker position. So we'll try to clarify how we're ranking these guys as we go, but we'll start with edge rusher here. And so for the Eagles, that is Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat, Derek Barnett, Hassan Reddick, Nolan Smith. Those guys are all going to be considered edge rushers here for the Eagles. For the Cowboys, it's DeMarcus Lawrence. We're going to put Micah Parsons as an edge rusher. Dorrance Armstrong, Sam Williams, Tack McKinley, Dante Fowler Jr. That's what we're looking at for the Cowboys. For the Giants, it's Ashawn Robinson, Leonard Williams, which you could almost consider Leonard Williams a defensive tackle, but Kevon Thibodeau. Those are kind of the guys that we're looking at. Azeez Ojulari. And then for the Commanders, it's Chase Young, Montez Sweat, James Smith-Williams. I don't think they really rushed Jamin Davis very much. So.
Not a whole lot.
I thought they had another edge rusher. I feel like there's somebody missing here.
You said Montez, Chase Young.
Yeah, I mean, those are the big two, but
yeah.
Okay. They used to be deeper than that. So anyways, you look at this one, and again, the easy edge, in my opinion, goes to the team that just had 70 sacks last season and didn't really lose any of their edge rushers. In fact, they added a first-round talent in Nolan Smith. They're going to get Derek Barnett, a former first-round pick who has not lived up to that hype, but still a former first-round pick. They get him back off of injury. I think the Eagles are, clear and easy the number one edge rushing group here.
Yeah, this is now these defensive groups are going to be a lot closer than the offensive one, and I think the Eagles are still number one. I don't think the gap is as I don't think the gap is as wide per se because man, you got Micah, and then like Sweat and Chase Young are no slouches either. Even though Chase Young is coming off injury too as well, I think. He was hurt for a lot of the year.
He's been hurt a lot. That he came out, billed as the generational pass rusher, and they famously took him over taking a quarterback. And who was the quarterback that year? I can't even remember now.
And I forget even the year he was taken at this point. I remember.
Oh, it was 2022. So that would have been the Chase Justin Herbert, Tua. That was their draft. Joe Burrow went
Joe
one.
Burrow draft. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's right.
That's right. Because they're all getting
went number 2.
Because they didn't pick up Chase Young's option, and all these quarterbacks are getting deals, so that makes sense. Yeah, they didn't pick Washington didn't pick up his option, I don't believe.
Yeah, here. So they went. So Joe Burrow went 1, and then they took Chase Young. The Giants also took Andrew Thomas. So both teams that still need quarterbacks eschewing Tua Tagovailoa, Justin Herbert, who both went off the board 5 and 6. So there were quarterbacks to be had. You got to think Washington regrets that at this point in time. But, I think you could make an argument that all 4 pass rushes in the NFC East are probably top 10 in the NFL. So this is an extremely good group. I would have the Cowboys at number 2. Micah Parsons is such a beast. DeMarcus Lawrence has not played at the level that he has in the past, but he's still a very good pass rusher who I think gets overshadowed now by Micah Parsons.
Yeah, DeMarcus Lawrence doesn't do very well against Lane Johnson, so we don't even get to see the dominance that he's supposed to have, especially in these division games. But putting them at 2, yeah, Micah Parsons is in a tier of his own, one of the best defensive players in the league. And Lawrence, when he's not playing against Lane Johnson, is a very good pass rusher in his own right. So I agree with Dallas being number 2.
All right, so at number 3, you're basically pitting Chase Young and Montez Sweat against Leonard Williams and Kayvon Thibodeau and Azeez Ojulari. I think it's a slight edge to the Commanders here.
But give me Washington here, yeah.
But the Giants still have a very good pass rush that's loaded with a lot of young players. Kayvon Thibodeau, second-year player. Azeez Ojulari will be a third-year player. So there's a lot there for the Giants. I've been doing on my other podcast, we went through last week, and we're imagining a world where there's a hypothetical expansion team. And so each team gets to protect 4 players on offense and defense. And so we went through the NFC. We're going to go through the AFC next week. And then the third week, we're going to actually draft a team from the unprotected players. And one of the things that surprised me going through that exercise was how hard it was for the Giants. Like, there were so many players I wanted to protect. Like, they've started to build the roster right. They've got a lot of young talent for sure.
Yep, they're a quarterback away. Where did Azeez's brother get drafted to again? BJ? Because we were talking about him all draft season, and we were like, if he's there for the Eagles, he might be an option. I forget where BJ ended up going to.
He ended up going to the who drafted him?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember.
I remember
where he was mocked to a million times. Oh, the Bengals? Oh, that's a nice fit.
No, it was the Cardinals.
Oh, that is not a nice fit.
He's in Arizona, eagerly awaiting who his head coach in 2024 will be after Jonathan Gannon goes 1-16.
Jonathan Gannon won't make it to week 16, actually. So. Oh man.
Okay, go ahead.
I was gonna say, did you see the little Florio Howie exchange? What do you make of that, of the whole Jonathan Gannon? Did you see that exchange between the two?
No, I don't guess I did.
Oh man. Well, they like basically Florio was just like pushing to get an answer out of Howie Roseman, like what went down with the whole Jonathan Gannon stuff, and Howie was just like, Gannon was a good contributor for us, and we just want to move forward. And Florio was like, "Why are you deflecting? Like, just tell me, tell me what it is." And Howie Roseman was like, "You're literally a top 5 conspiracy theorist in the NFL." like on the shows. That's what he said. You got to go see that clip. I'm surprised you missed it. It went like viral and everything. It's crazy.
Yeah, I'll have to go check it out. This is my kid's first week out of school, so I've been online a lot less, and
I'm
missing football, but it's been good. So we're getting into that summer routine.
Just
yeah, that's true. Okay, let's kick it over to the interior defensive line. So the Eagles have Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Fletcher Cox, Milton Williams as sort of their interior grouping. The Cowboys have Osa Odigizua, who has the coolest name in the division.
Who is
Osa Odigizua?
I've never heard of that guy.
How do you think you spell that?
OSI.
OSA.
OSA. What's his last name? What is it again?
Odigizua.
It starts with Odigizua.
Dhizuwa.
Okay, well,
but yeah, it's a fun name to say. But yeah, they've got.
How long has he been on the team? How long has he been here?
I think he's been there a couple of years.
Oh my God.
They've got. Obviously, they've got Mozzie Smith, the guy that they went out and drafted in the first round, overdrafted him.
Your boy, yeah. Mozzie Smith.
Oso Odigizua has been in the NFL 2 years, so he was a rookie in 2021. So Mozzie Smith, Neville Gallimore, former Oklahoma Sooner. They got Jonathan Hankins. That's their interior grouping. The Giants have Dexter Lawrence. Maybe you consider like Leonard Williams there. They play a 3-4. He's kind of the interior guy a little bit. Since we put the Giants last on edge rusher, we're going to consider Leonard Williams an interior defensive lineman for this. So Dexter Lawrence, Leonard Williams. Then the Commanders have Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen, Fedarian Mathis, and John Ridgeway. So again, the Eagles
Don't do it.
The Eagles got to be number one, man. Jalen Carter, Fletcher Cox, Jordan Davis, Milton Williams. Like, I don't think there's a group that challenges them out of here. Maybe Dexter Lawrence, Leonard Williams in terms of like your two starters. But when you look at the entire depth there, I think you can make an argument for the Giants, but I still think it's got to be the Eagles.
I'm going to go against the grain here.
Okay.
I'm going to say the Commanders have the best interior duo in the division. I'm going to say it. Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne, right? That's the other guy? Dude, they give us hell kind of on whenever we play them. I'm going to go out and say, like, I know the defensive line, you know, as a whole, you consider depth, and the Eagles are far and away better. But you have Jordan Davis, who we hear is making strides in OTAs, but you still don't know what he's going to look like. He played in 26% of the snaps last season. You have Jalen Carter, who we hope can, you know, stay out of trouble, and he'll be all right. And Fletcher Cox, who was at the back end of his career. And we lost Javon Hargrave. I'm gonna say, and I'm not as big of a Dexter Lawrence fan as you are. I'm actually surprised to hear that. But I'm gonna say Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne are the best interior duo in the division. I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna own up to it.
All right, man. You're not a Dexter Lawrence fan?
I mean, I'm more of a fan of Deron Payne's 11.5 sacks last year.
Dexter Lawrence had 7.5 sacks last year from the nose tackle position.
Yeah, well, what is Deron Payne? Well, he's not a nose tackle.
He's not a nose tackle. He plays like 3-tech.
Yeah, well, shit, man. Yeah, I guess he's all right. I see a lot of Deron Payne like tape when I'm like prepping for Eagle stuff, and I'm like, this guy's a pain in the ass. Like,
I think I don't remember the exact stat last year, but I think it was something about Dexter Lawrence had it was something like 30 pressures from the nose tackle position.
Damn.
And the next closest player had like 5 or something. Oh no, here it is. Dexter Lawrence generated 29 pressures aligned as a 0 technique. Second place had 8.
Whoa, shit. Well,
like, he is a monster on the interior of the defensive line.
You know who else is a monster? Jonathan Allen and his 7.5 sacks last year. Bro, that duo is dirty. I don't care what name was. Dexter Lawrence sounds like he's dirty too, though. But is Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams, and well, Leonard Williams is versatile because he's all over the place. But I feel like Allen and Payne wreak more havoc as a duo, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, man, you're making me. I'm talking myself into putting the Giants number 2 here. Is that crazy?
Oh yes, it is crazy. over the Eagles. Well, you can't put them over the Eagles.
I mean, you're talking me out of it. You got Jordan Davis, who
we don't
do a lot last year, was injured. You've got Fletcher Cox, who is on the back end of his career. You've got Jalen Carter,
who we're just
like, there's a lot of potential.
Milton Williams, who it looks promising, but like we don't know. Like they if you would, I would. And the loss of Hargrave is big too. Like this is why I put the Commanders at 1. This is why I do it. I could get behind moving the Eagles behind the Giants, to be honest.
I'm doing it.
We're doing it. Don't drag us. They still have the best edge rushers, but I can get behind. There's a lot of uncertainty in old men is where I'm at.
A lot of it comes into how you want to classify Leonard Williams. Like the ESPN depth chart lists him as a right defensive end, but they run a 3-4. And so he's really, like, I would consider him an interior defensive lineman. Usually one of your DNs is more of an interior defensive guy in a 3-4. So
I think you're right. Leonard's not rushing.
Because otherwise you're comparing like this Eagles quartet. You're comparing this. It's not a quartet. What do you call a group? That's a music. Anyways, whatever. You're comparing these Eagles 4 guys that play 2 spots to Dexter Lawrence, who is the sole nose tackle that never comes off the field. And it's not necessarily apples to apples. Like I said at the beginning here, the defensive fronts, that gets a little tricky with different teams doing different things. But yeah, this is definitely the thing that people are going to dislike. And we'll find out who listened to the podcast and who just quote tweets the graphic when it goes out. So
yeah, I'm just like the more you think about, like, when you think of the whole defensive line as a whole, I guess it's obviously the Eagles, but like just the interior, you're like, damn, if Fletcher Cox goes down and like you lose Jordan Davis again for like to a high ankle sprain or something, or he's just not a good, like, you just can't play him every down, which I don't know what the Eagles' plan is with him next year. And Jalen Carter's like good, but like still raw, and you can't play him every down. Like, it's looking a little. I don't know. It can get hairy. It can get hairy.
I think, assuming he stays out of trouble, I think Jalen Carter is going to play the majority of the defensive.
He'll play 90% of the snaps next year.
And I think that you're going to have a lot of rotation between Jordan Davis on rundowns and Fletcher Cox on passing downs.
Yeah, and as long as you keep Fletcher Cox in on like 40% of the snaps, he'll be all right. He's you know how he gets when he has to play fucking 80s every snap. He's gonna be, oh man, I don't mean to curse on BJ and Milo.
We'll find out. Decide, I guess
we'll find out.
Yeah, you put Fletcher Cox out there on rundowns, and he starts to lose the will to play football.
Yeah, yep, that's exactly what it is, and he says it too. Like, man, I'm just tired. Like, I don't know what y'all want from me. That's where it goes.
All right, well, let's move on to linebacker here, where, again, we're going to exclude guys that are primarily edge rushers like Hassan Reddick, like Azeez Ojulari here. We're looking at off-ball linebackers. So for the Eagles, that is Nakobe Dean, Nicholas Morrow, Christian Ellis, Sean Bradley. I'm going to stop reading now because I'm depressed. Let's go to the Cowboys, who have Leighton Vander Esch, Jabril Cox, DeMarvion Overshone. Not an inspiring group of linebackers anywhere here. The Giants have Bobby Okereke, Darian Beavers, guy that I loved in a draft, but for what it's worth, Gerard Davis. Does anybody in this division have good linebackers? The Commanders have David Mayo, Cody Barton, Jamin Davis. Yeah, if it was possible to just put everybody fourth, I think that would be a valid strategy here. Like, nobody in this division has good linebackers, period.
Yeah, it gets tricky because, like you mentioned, the edge rushers, like who's really a linebacker. And I found out it's foursome. Foursome is a group of 4. So there you go.
that totally makes sense.
But man, it's an uninspiring list. You probably say like Bobby Okereke is the best one just because like he's good. I mean, he's not like some like top of the tier linebacker, but he's good. You could put Bobby Okereke. Nakobe. What's Nakobe Dean gonna do in year 2 with more playing time? Man, Leighton Vander Esch, we know what he is, but he's not like an impact player. This is tough.
Yeah.
I think I would put one. I'll put the Giants.
Yeah, I think I would go Giants 1, Cowboys 2.
Yeah.
Just off the back of what Leighton Vander Esch has been at times.
Yeah.
And then you get down to Commanders, Eagles. The Eagles have a pretty poor linebacker situation, but I think the Commanders probably have it worse. Jamin Davis kind of flopped as a first-round pick, and here's all you need to know about the Commanders. You know who's on their linebacker depth chart? Nate Gary.
Yeah, well, there you go. Practice squad.
Now, granted, he is their third-string middle linebacker, but if he's on your roster, you deserve to be 4th.
You know whose tape I do like though? Christian Ellis. I think he can show some. He showed a lot on special teams. He had a couple nice hits last year, from what I remember. I think the potential of Nakobe Dean and what he was able to do in Georgia and playing behind a couple guys that he played in college, I think that gives them the edge over the Commanders. Not a good one, not a significant edge, but yeah, this is in terms of linebackers. Yeah, I'll throw the Bobby Okereke led Giants up top, and the rest can fight about it.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to cornerback, where the Eagles have a trio of James Bradbury, Darius Slay, and Avonte Maddox when healthy, which is like every third game. You could throw in Greedy Williams as depth there, Zach McPherson, Keely Ringo. The Cowboys have Stephon Gilmore, Trevon Diggs, They do not list a nickelback on their depth chart, but Jordan Lewis would be their nickelback, I believe. Yeah. That's strange that they don't have a nickelback listed.
Jordan Lewis is like safety / nickel for them.
Yeah, the Giants also do not have. This is a weird depth chart, but anyways, the Giants have Deonte Banks, a rookie that I really like, Adoree Jackson, Darnay Holmes, Cordero Flott is sort of what they're looking at cornerback, and then the Commanders have Kendall Fuller, Emmanuel Forbes, Danny Johnson, Benjamin St. Juste. So
I'm a big St. Juste fan. I love St. Juste.
Yeah,
as a player.
After how this duo of Slay and Bradbury played last year, again, I think you got to have the Eagles number 1 here. Now, there's obviously potential that that's not going to go nearly as well this year, but for now, they're my 1.
Yeah, it makes sense. They're both proven. They're both top, when healthy, top 10 cornerbacks. They both allowed very low passer ratings when targeted. The bringing back Bradbury, I would have been concerned if they brought back Bradbury and Slay was about to walk, because I was like, can Bradbury be like a true like cornerback 1 in shadow? Even though the defense, I don't know how Desai is going to do it, but they don't like shadow guys. They kind of just play sides. But Slay, yeah, although he'll be 32, or he just turned 32 rather, and you're banking on him playing a lot of snaps again. And you did see signs of decline. I know fans don't want to hear it, but he tailed off at the end of that year. I think so. Anyway, he didn't look particularly great at the end of the season. Bradbury had a strong year, so I'm fine with that. Yeah, and there's a ton. Now, I don't know if it's going to be good like talent, but there's a ton of young talent back there. You got Greedy. You have Ringo. You have Josh Jobe. You have Eli Ricks. You have some guys who, like, if you give them a closer look, maybe they could turn into something. But as far as the top of the depth chart, like strict like your cornerback duos, and factoring Avonte Maddox in there, who is top 5 nickel when healthy, you have to put the Eagles number 1, I think.
I'm about to have an existential crisis right here on air, because I just realized I spent the last year talking about how Darius Slay lost a step, and he's younger than I am.
Yeah. We lost step. Our steps have been lost.
Yeah,
we lost steps years ago.
I never found my step. If I'm
I never found the step to lose it. Yeah.
But yeah, Darius Slay is 4 months younger than I am, so.
You'll be
it happens. Pour one out.
You're 32?
I'm 33.
Yeah, I did not.
Well, okay, no, that's not. I'll be 33 in like a couple months.
Dang, I did not know that. Dang.
Yeah.
Oh, you're aging well at least. So that's good.
I'm the old. I guess am I the old guy on BGN now? I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I'll be 30 in November, so I'm not young by any means.
I'm gonna have to survey the BGN podcasters and see how old everyone is. I might.
Kiss is what, pushing 50?
Yeah, he's a producer now. He got out from behind the mic. So
that's right. We got to ask the other guys. Jess, how old is Jess? We'll have to ask her. Well, maybe that's not a good idea. Maybe.
Yeah, at least not on air. You don't ask her on air. That's for sure. I know that much. I'm wise. I'm old enough and wise enough to know that.
Maybe not. Sorry, Jess. All right.
Jess catching strays here on an podcast. Okay, so back to cornerbacks before we get in any trouble here.
Old cornerbacks.
Yeah, back to old cornerbacks.
Dallas has an old one. Dallas has an old guy.
Dallas does have an old. Let's get number 4 out of the way here. I think number 4 is easily the Commanders. I have, they needed a lot of help at cornerback. Kendall Fuller is fine. They went and got Emmanuel Forbes in the first round. They should have taken Christian Gonzalez. I've got a lot of concerns about a 166-pound cornerback. Yep. And he could be good, but he's not proven. So I think the Commanders are easily 4th.
He weighs how much?
Really 166 pounds.
AJ Bound is going to throw him in like the 5th row of the bleachers. Like he's going to throw him, scream him, and toss him into the coolers. I did not know he was my weight. Essentially, I could be in the NFL. God.
Well, I don't take this the wrong way, but I'm pretty sure he's faster than you are.
I think so. What was his 40 time? I've run a solid 4, like 7.
You're not running in the 4s.
What? You don't think so, dude?
No.
I'm gonna. I need somebody to time me. I definitely run under 5. That's for sure. Oh wow. I'm healthy. I'm active. I run every day.
How many likes do we need on Twitter to get you to time a 40 and do it live?
I'll have somebody time of. Well, I don't even. We'll get. Well, 100's not even a lot these days. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. But I definitely run under 5. Shane, God, don't disrespect me.
All right. We'll see. But that's what we need to do. Is we need to do the combine events. We should film the combine events. Us doing them and
my 3 cone. My 3 cone.
I would have a better 3 cone than a 40 time. That's for sure.
Is your 3 cone better than DK Metcalf? His was not good. Maybe.
The thing about running a 40 time is then you would, after you ran your 40, you'd be like, oh yeah, these offensive linemen that are slow, those guys could run me down.
I can't believe you think I can't run under a 5. I'm upset about this. I'll be upset for a little bit.
I think I have never seen you run, but I think there is a very small chance you're getting out of the blocks or not out of the blocks. They don't even run out of blocks, but getting there in under 5.
What did Amanda Forbes run? What was his 40?
I don't know. I'll look it up here in just a second. Well, actually, I'm just gonna look it up now. Emmanuel Forbes. Let's see.
It's a 4.4.
His 40 time was a 4.35.
All right, well, got me there.
You're definitely not running a 4.35, Victor.
All right, you got me there.
He's 6 foot 3/4 inch, 166 pound with a 79-inch wingspan.
Yeah, his BMI percentage is nothing. I know he has no ounce of fat on his body.
Yeah. So, what did Jason Kelsey run? We're chasing all kind of rabbit trails here.
Is it under?
He ran a 4.89. So you're telling me you're?
I can beat Jason Kelsey in a race. Yes, I can beat Jason Kelsey in a race.
Jason Kelsey in a race.
Yes, I can.
All right, somebody contact the New Heights podcast and set this up.
I'm confident. I'm confident I can run faster than Jason Kelsey. And that was his combine. He runs a 4.89 now? I doubt it. Even though he was outrunning Miles Sanders on a lot of those plays.
Yeah, Victor Williams would like to put out issue a challenge to the New Heights podcast, the Kelsey brothers. We would like to get a Kelsey brothers versus EPA podcast hosts.
No, not Travis. I don't even run against Travis, bro. Travis will leave me in the dust. I'll take Jason, though.
All right. Okay, so we put the Commanders here at 4. Buckle up, folks. It's going to be a long off season. We got all kinds of tangents to chase.
I can't run a 5. My God.
The Giants and the Cowboys is interesting when you look at their cornerback groups. It's close to me. Stephon Gilmore, Trevon Diggs is a good duo.
You have Washington 4th, right? That's what I'm looking at.
Yeah,
they will be
Washington
4th. Okay, I was about to say. Yeah.
Giants have Adoree Jackson and Deontay Banks as their duo. So you definitely like the youth on the Giants side. They're not having Stephon Gilmore in there, but I think I would lean the Cowboys here just because I'm not relying on a rookie starter like you are with the Giants, but I do really like the Giants cornerback group. So I think I would have Dallas 2, New York 3. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Dallas 2 makes sense. They have Trevon Diggs, who we can, we all drag him to death, obviously, because it's fun. But he still creates turnovers. He was better in coverage last season than the 1,100 yards he allowed in coverage the year prior. So Trevon Diggs is still good. I think he's a top 10, 12 cornerback, depending on who you're asking. And Stephon Gilmore, yeah, that's a good get for them. I don't know. I mean, obviously not in his prime, but he used to be defensive player of the year, and he's going to have the same role as kind of Bradbury does with the Eagles, of just trailing some of these CB2s. And he made some plays with the Colts he was with last year, I believe, right? Indianapolis. So I think that's a solid duo for them. And if they need Jordan Lewis to come in there, he has the experience. One cornerback that's not good on that roster is Anthony Brown, because we watched AJ Brown toss him all over the place in the couple games. So as long as they don't have to play Anthony Brown, I think the Cowboys will be all right as far as cornerbacks are concerned.
All right, let's go on to safety then. The Eagles
do we have to?
Terrell Edmonds, Sidney Brown, Reed Blankenship. The Cowboys have Jaron Kearse, Donovan Wilson, Malik Hooker. The Giants have Jason Pinnock, Xavier McKinney, Dane Belton, Bobby McCain. And the Commanders have Cameron Curl, Derek Forrest, Jatavis Martin, Jeremy Reeves. Not great safety rooms in the division.
Yeah, when you read those names, that just shows me like, dang, really, like the league does not prioritize safeties anymore. Like they just, as long as you got good corners and a good pass rush, you can throw me and you back there, and we'll be okay. So when you read those names, that made me think like, dang, how many teams in the NFL have like just subpar safeties and just are fine with it? Like this is where we're at in the NFL, huh?
Yeah, which I guess makes sense as teams are moving to more too high shells. You don't need that center field safety with all the range. You just have to cover half the field. And
so I know you're tired, huh? We're not getting.
You're going into yeah. And when you start to transition into quarters type stuff, you're essentially manning up on a guy, but you get 15 yards cushion at the snap. So it's not like you have to worry about him running by you. So I guess it makes sense to a degree. I wish the Eagles valued safety a little more, but I guess as I look at this list, I don't see any safety room I like. So I'm going to start looking at individual names I like. And
Yep.
I really like Cameron Curl from the Commanders, Xavier McKinney from the Giants. Those are probably the two best safeties in the division. So I'd probably have to put the Giants and the Commanders as the top two groups, which is really just based off of one player.
Who are the Dallas safeties again?
Dallas safeties are Jerron Kearse, Donovan Wilson, and Malik Hooker.
They still hanging on to Malik Hooker? Wow. Yeah, put the Giants lost Julian Love too, didn't they? So who's the guy next to McKinney?
Jason Pinnock.
Okay. Well, man, this is not good. Man, you're talking about throwing the Eagles a little higher because at least they have names you know. Well, I guess that we know. If you ask the casual who'd read Blankenship is, they probably don't know.
He's the UDFA that intercepted Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah,
put some respect on his name.
Got his first pick before Darius Slay, who's still upset about it. I like Terrell Edmonds. I like Sidney Brown. I mean, again, rookie. Again, another veteran that we have to see. I guess put the Giants because they have the best safety of the group. I guess, and that's by default. That's not even like feeling good about it.
Xavier McKinney.
And then you can give me Cameron Curl.
Yeah,
second,
I'm a big Cam Curl guy.
Eagles third because that's like the trio. Like any combination of Reed, Terrell Edmonds, and Sidney Brown should be enough. I expect they'll use Sidney Brown in like a box type role to start out anyway. And then Dallas just because they still have Malik Hooker for whatever reason. Kearse is okay. Never heard of the other guy, so I assume that he's nothing. So here we go.
All right, so that rounds out our defense. So just to recap here, the Eagles, number 1 in edge and cornerback, number 3 in interior defensive line, surprisingly, number 3 in linebacker, and number 3 in safety. The Cowboys were 2nd in edge, linebacker, and cornerback, and 4th in interior defensive line and safety. The Commanders were 1st in interior defensive line, 2nd in safety, 3rd in edge, and then 4th in linebacker and cornerback. And then the Giants were 1st in linebacker and safety, 2nd interior defensive line, 3rd in corner, and 4th in edge rusher. And so, again, I'll scroll up so you can sort of see the whole chart here. We will tweet this out after the episode goes live for those of you listening on audio format only. I know it's a little hard to keep track of as we're talking about it. So you can check out our Twitter accounts for that. I'm at Shane Haff NFL. He's at the Philly Pod. We'll get the BGN Radio account to tweet out the graphic as well. But you guys can sound off in the comments of the podcast when it posts and let us know what you guys think. Let us know what we've missed. But Victor, before we get out of here, no tier ranking is complete if we don't rank the head coaches in this division.
Wait, real quick, before we talk about the coaches, who has the best special teams unit? It has to be Dallas, right? Turpin and... Well, their kicker is horrible, but whoever is kicking the ball.
Did you watch the playoffs last year for their kicking?
Yeah, but I mean, the Eagles have no special teams. Well, now that we're fair catching kickoffs now, I guess special teams doesn't matter. But
the Eagles have a good kicker. It's funny that, like, if you ask me who the best kicker in the division is, I'd say Jake Elliott. And if you ask me who the worst special teams was, I would say the Eagles easily.
Yeah, because we don't have a punter and we don't have any returners. So I don't. Yeah, Kevontae Turpin is dirty though. He's a hell of a gem that the Cowboys found.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into it. Head coaches here. Obviously, Nick Sirianni for the Eagles, Mike McCarthy for the Cowboys, Brian Daboll for the Giants, and Ron Rivera for the Commanders. So there's easy tiers in this one. For me, you've got Sirianni and Daboll are easily the top 2 guys. McCarthy and Riverboat Ron are easily the bottom 2 guys, but the order I'm not so sure about. So Sirianni versus Daboll is really interesting. Nobody expected the Giants to do what they did with the roster they did. The Giants did not expect to pay Daniel Jones money, or they would have picked up his 5th-year option. And so Brian Daboll came in with no receivers, with no quarterback, and he got to the playoffs. And I'm a huge fan of Brian Daboll. But then again, nobody expected the Eagles to do what they did, taking the leap from a wild card, easy win for the Buccaneers to going to the Super Bowl. To be honest, I think you could argue either way in this one. Brian Daboll has done less with more, or done more with less. That's not necessarily the thing, though. It's who's the best coach. And so I'm going to default, partially because it's an Eagles podcast and partially because they still had more success. At the end of the day, it's close, so I'm going to give it to the guy that made it to the Super Bowl. I think we could easily see ourselves flipping that in a year or two, though.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting conversation. Because you think like if Dayball had the Eagles roster, like would they lose a game? Like that's what you start to think about, and you also have to think about like Shane Steichen was responsible for a lot of the offensive success that occurred in Philadelphia. He was a surgical play caller. Like there's a lot of things that Brian Johnson is going to have to try and replicate this season. He obviously knows Jalen Hurts. But there's going to be, I think it's a big loss when you lose a guy like Steichen, who was responsible for a lot of that success. Sirianni was hands off for the most part as far as play calling until he handed it over. So I will put the Eagles first because they obviously coming off a Super Bowl appearance, and they are. I saw the stat I think from Jeff Kerr who said they're the first team to like improve their win total by 5, like like 2 years in a row from 4 to 9 to or from 4 to 9 to 14. I believe is what I saw. What year did they win 4 wins? What was that?
That was 2020.
We only won 4 games that year.
That was the year that Doug got fired and Wentz went crazy. And
yeah, 4. I did not know we only won 4 games. Well, I mean, I probably knew, but that feels like such a long time ago. They went from 4 wins to 9 wins to 14 wins under Sirianni. I think that is good to note as well. But Dayball, man, there were some questions like, well, he was with Josh Allen in Buffalo and all this, and what can he do? But he did a lot with Daniel Jones, and it's hard to do a lot with Daniel Jones. So the Dayball is very good in my eyes, and I think the disparity is a lot closer than some might believe. But I'll give the edge to Sirianni because this is the Bleeding Green podcast. And yeah.
All right, so then you get Mike McCarthy versus Ron Rivera.
It's not as much of a question as you think it is. You know who's last in that list? The guy who wasted Aaron Rodgers' prime and is doing the same with Dak Prescott.
Yeah, I think Mike McCarthy is kind of an oaf. I think Ron Rivera rode Cam Newton and then has not been good without Cam Newton at all. I think Cam Newton kind of pulled Riverboat Ron a long ways, but I'll go with you on this. I'll put Rivera at number 3, McCarthy number 4. But to be honest, I think both of those teams should have moved on from their coaches. If not this offseason, maybe even the offseason before.
What is Kellen Moore supposed to, or what is McCarthy supposed to do without Kellen Moore? What's the plan now?
Run the ball?
Run the ball with Tony Pollard as the lead back? Okay, well, we'll see how far that gets. Oh my God, Kellen Moore did a lot for that offense, man. He did a lot.
He did. I think the Cowboys could be in for a rough year without Kellen Moore. I think that he did a lot to keep that offense going, and I'm not sure that Mike McCarthy has that in him. But we'll see. We're sure he doesn't. I'll tell you that. Yeah. All right, so that's gonna about wrap this one up. Victor, any surprises for you as we went through this exercise? Anything catch you off guard?
Well, not necessarily off guard. I'm surprised I talked myself out of the Eagles being third in as far as defensive line rankings, and the running backs. Like when you break it down by position and realize that the Eagles, like as they have talent, I think DeAndre Swift, when healthy and when focused, because he does like kind of miss holes. Like he has some of that Miles Sanders syndrome, but I think he's one of the most talented backs. Like in pure talent, strictly like talent as a running back, DeAndre Swift is top 5. If he just has to kind of tie it all together and stay on the field. But yeah, I think Jerron Payne and Jonathan Allen are the best interior duo in the division, and I'll stand by that. But the Eagles led a lot of these groups. We knew that. Wasn't aware that all the safeties were terrible, and was not aware that all the linebackers were terrible. So that's interesting to see.
Yeah, I'm the thing I'm walking away most surprised about is that I let you talk me into putting the Eagles not even second but third as in the interior defensive line group. Yeah. And then, I didn't realize that linebacker was so bad all around the division either.
You were fine until I said something about Fletcher Cox being 80, and you were like, well. And Jordan Davis played a quarter of the snaps last year. We're supposed to expect these two to hunker down and man the charge now that Javon Hargrave is gone. But we'll see if Jalen Carter can kind of, keep his head on straight, and we'll figure it out.
All right. Well, that is going to about wrap it up. Victor, any final thoughts? Anything you need to get out there for the people before we get
out there? No, I think we told them enough this episode. Appreciate you guys for listening to this edition. Probably saw more of our personalities in this one than past iterations, but that's what you're going to get in the off season. Be sure to follow me on all social media platforms at the Philly Pod. I just recorded an episode of my podcast, the Philly Pod, right before this. So the old voice box is getting a workout today, but you can find the Philly Pod. Also just search that on pod platforms and you can subscribe to that. We'll have a new episode talking about Desai, We talked about the 2023 schedule, and we talked about a couple of wide receiver rumors that are out there as well. So if you're interested in any of that, be sure to go ahead and subscribe and visit thelibertyline.com for around-the-clock coverage of all 5 major Philadelphia sports. All right, that's it for my soapbox, Shane. Go ahead.
All right. Well, if anybody out there has an in with Jason Kelce, you guys reach out to Jason Kelce on Twitter.
Tell him I'll beat him in a race. I'll
grab the clip of Victor saying he could beat him in a race.
And
let's make this happen here.
For saying I can't run under a 4.99 in a freaking 40-yard dash. I'm 30, but I'm not dead yet. It's not over.
I'll believe it. I'll believe it when I see it.
Or
so
you're
you
gonna
guys
see it.
pressure.
I'm gonna record it outside and I'm gonna send it to you.
You guys peer pressure Victor, and I want to see the course marked off. None of this 35-yard Penn State track thing for the 40-yard dash at the combines. None of that. I want to see a legit sub 540 from Victor, preferably with Jason Kelce running against him. So let's make that happen, BG and people. All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the EPA podcast. We will be back. I don't know if it'll be next week, but we'll be back throughout the off season periodically to give you guys some different shows. If you have a topic you want to hear us talk about, we'll probably do some mailbags along the way as well. So if you got questions for a mailbag, if you have a topic idea, something you want to hear us talk about in the off season, be sure and reach out to us. We're always looking for ideas when we're not in that game-to-game, week-to-week grind in the regular season. So you can reach out to me on Twitter at Shane Haff NFL. You can reach out to Victor at the Philly Pod. So from me and Victor, from the BGN crew, we will see you guys next time on the EPA podcast. Go Birds.
I could run a 540.